All right, well, welcome everyone. My name is Paul Way, and I am here to present on an application that I built for our school, Crossroads School. And I will just say to start with, this is actually one of the top Google image hits for the word irony, which I would say I'm in the place of right now. It is perhaps strange that as a 25-year veteran educator, I'm presenting here at this conference for developers. I am not a professional developer. I am well behind the times in many things. And I'm probably the least informed about modern coding techniques here. But what I hope I can offer in this session is a little bit of the education perspective, a little bit of some of the common problems we deal with, and maybe some of our roadblocks and how we worked through challenges to be able to produce something which may give some ideas for how to smooth that roadmap going forward. So today I'm going to be speaking for about 30 minutes. I will just give some introductions to myself, to the school that I work at, and talk through the problem statement that prompted this application that I built. I'll walk through some of the user stories of how that application works, how it interacts with the Sky API in order to do its work. And again, as I said, talk through some of the struggles and roadblocks that I had in trying to work through that, and next steps for developments. I want to give a shout out to Gabriela, who is helping out in helping to make sure I am staying on track and managing the chat. If you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them in, and I'm more than happy to speak to those directly. I will also probably only, as I said, be speaking for about 30 minutes and then have time for any Q&A at the end. So moving forward, a little bit about myself. I am, as I mentioned, about a 25-year veteran educator. I've been working as a teacher and technology coordinator in schools in Washington, D.C. and in Santa Monica, California for some time now. My career in education started as an AmeriCorps member in a school in Oakland, actually. And for me, it was just a small miracle that fascinated me. I never thought that I would be a teacher, but watching in the AmeriCorps program that I participated in, watching students work through material and work through things for day after day after day and not get it, not get it, not get it. And one day it's theirs, was really magical for me and something I have enjoyed being a part of ever since. I have my master's in education technology leadership from George Washington University, and I have worked as a technology coordinator and computer science instructor at schools such as Sidwell Friends School in Washington, D.C. I was actually just leaving that school as the Obamas were starting to come into the White House and send their own kids there. And where I am now at Crossroads School in Santa Monica, California. A lot of my role is technology integration, and I also work with the website a lot. So I have a pretty deep working knowledge of our Blackbaud academic side. And the best part of my job really is that I get to teach computer science to a wonderful group of high school students, as well as occasionally courses like design and engineering. The upper level computer science courses I'm teaching now include a iOS development course working in Swift, and the course I'm just wrapping up this year, which is a full year-long course doing a deep dive into AI and artificial intelligence. It has been really an amazing journey, and we get to look at a lot of what's happening on the news and unpack not only the technology side of what's going on, how does it work, but also to look at what does it mean? What do all these new technologies mean for us as a society? So a bit about the school that I work at. We are a K-12 independent school in Santa Monica that was built on 5 commitments to academic excellence, to the arts, to the broader community, to our own community of racial and economic diversity. And I'm blanking on the last one right now. We would say that we are a progressive educational school, although I think if you ask any of the educators at our school what that progressive definition means, you might get as many different answers. For the logistics, we have about 1,200 students and about 300 faculty and staff split up between our upper, middle, and elementary divisions. And that brings us to our problem statement and what brought us to build this application. What you're looking at right now is the high school schedule. So at Crossroads, the schedule used to be, that there was a rotating block schedule that was a morning and an afternoon and a middle block where for the academic classes, those classes would meet 2 out of every 3 days. And those classes in the morning and in the afternoon would also be offset by a fixed schedule that met based on the day of the week. Monday and Wednesday, there would be a morning arts class that could be the photography class or the dance class. The afternoon could meet with the graphic design class or some other arts blocked scheduled class. And those 2 schedules, even though they were distinct, would overlap and not interact. And the Blackbaud scheduling system was smart enough to be able to handle this. But at the time, there was really no good way to get the information out of Blackbaud for where an upper school teacher should be at a given point. And this was further complicated by the fact that in the middle school, there was a totally different schedule that was not related to the upper school schedule, and arts classes would meet in the middle blocks. And given that our PE, our life skills, and our arts teachers would teach in both divisions, our sub-administrator, when a teacher was out, would find herself consulting 3 printed out notebooks of schedules for a given faculty member, and then cross-referencing that with which day of the academic cycle it was, along with the phase of the moon and whether Mercury was rising or not, and 10 other factors to try and figure out where she needed to send a substitute to. And this problem wasn't just for the substitute teachers. It was actually a problem for our facilities department as well that needed to be able to get into rooms and to be able to update, know when students would be out of a space so they could hang a projector or fix the whiteboard or do any other facilities work. And our admissions team as well really needed to know, for instance, when are the biology courses taught, because we want to be able to drop in and see what they're doing or be able to take a tour through in a path that might give them a good taste of what was going on at our school. So the core functionality of what we built was something that needed to, first of all, view and capture schedules across divisions, which at the time there really wasn't a good way to be able to do. And we ideally needed to be able to view both faculty schedules, room schedules, and course schedules across those divisions. And along with that, there was the usual CRUD, as they say. We needed a database that you could create, read, update, and delete requests for substitutes. And we needed to be able to run reports on when substitutes were needed and had served their duty so we can actually pay them. And we needed to be able to send emails through the system as well to be able to notify folks when there was a new request. So a bit about the technology stack and what I used to build this. I'm gonna give that a moment to let that speak for itself. Again, acknowledging I am not a professional developer here, but what I ended up working with was a website using Flask and Bootstrap, and then a pretty fantastic library for calendaring that is a JavaScript library called Full Calendar, as well as the Blackbaud API. And all of this was hosted using the Google Cloud platform, which, while complex, like a lot of the hosting services, I found to be exceptionally cheap. My billing cost for this past month, with all of the data that we've accrued over, honestly, years of running this, was 75 cents. And that's about on par for what it has been for the last several years worth of hosting for this application. So let me walk you through any of the folks that are, walk you through what a teacher's take on this would be, what their experience would be. The first thing, of course, that a teacher would need to do is hit our website and log in using their Google credentials. Once they're in, they would, the first piece is they might want to check their schedule or check a room schedule. And the engine for that worked as follows. You're getting a screen grab from the teacher schedule for Casey during the last week of school here. And what's happening when someone clicks the drop down to actually use the this tool is the call to the drop down would trigger a database poll to check, hey, what is Casey's schedule? And I want to note that at the time that I built this, there really wasn't an API endpoint that made it easy to grab an individual teacher's schedule. And it looks to me like the API endpoints on Blackbaud's side have been hugely updated. And there have been a lot more endpoints that we can grab that might make this data a little bit more accessible, which is exciting. But once that was grabbed for that particular teacher, and I was using the old legacy lists to be able to reach up and grab a one-time snapshot of all of the information for what a teacher was enrolled in based on, that would include the room, the block, the teacher, the name of the course, etc. Once that was grabbed and fetched, the key element that was next was, well, what division are they working in so we can figure out what the schedule is. And once we knew what the division was, either one or two additional fetch calls would go out to a Flask endpoint that would reach up to the Blackbaud Sky API and find what is the master schedule for that division for the coming 2 weeks. And this then I could use to build an array of events and then update the full calendar for building a visual for what that person was responsible for that week. And that worked for teachers, rooms, courses, what have you. If a teacher needed to request a sub, this was really the same process. So the teacher would go in, they would be logging in with their individual account, we would know who they were, they would put in their request date, and based on that, we could figure out where they were supposed to be. And once that was done, then that would update a text field with all of the data from those events for that day, where the event was supposed to be, what the times were for that particular sub responsibility, etc. So once that was submitted, there would be a SendGrid email notification out to the teacher, letting them know we received your sub request, and teachers could go back in and view their past requests and delete them as necessary as well. For the sub administrator, they would similarly get that sub request update, and they would be able to be notified that there was a new request in the system. And they could then pull through and search for any new requests that were sorted by date and check out for anything that was unfulfilled, meaning they hadn't assigned a substitute to that request yet. Then there was a manual process. And while there are some legitimate reasons for this process, the sub-administrator at this point would then get on the phone and call subs that they knew were good at teaching biology, or were the last sub that had come in that was really a talented calculus sub and good at handling that class. Or, as has changed this year, a lot more of our sub requests are handled internally. And so teachers would go in and, or the sub administrator would be assigning that request to one or many teachers to cover. From that point, the sub-admin would dive back into that request, and there was a email prompt that would contain a lot of standardized information of, this is what you do when you arrive at campus. Here are links to attendance sheets for that course. Here's where you can find the sub-plans and sub-lesson for that course. And all of that could be tossed out to reporting at the end to export it so that reporting can be done so that those substitutes could get paid for what they were in or documented as needed. On the sub-admin side, as I referenced earlier, one of the things that this tool was built to do was to reach up and grab both users from our database and reach up and grab substitute, or rather information about the classes, the course sections that each teacher might teach. And that was, again, because at the time there really wasn't a great way to hit the endpoints and grab individual section information for teachers, which I believe since has changed. Speaking of which, I wanted to transition a little bit to some of the more challenging pieces of this in hopes that these lessons could be useful to other schools or other organizations that are interested in getting started with the API. So I would say there were a few. Starting out of order here, I'm just going to mention the rapidly changing state of web applications and web development. As an educator, my primary day job is working with my students. And it is a struggle to stay on top of modern trends and where web technology has moved to, which is just a remarkable pace. And I always feel like I'm 5 years behind. In terms of using the Sky API, I found the API to be really wonderful and offer some amazing windows into accessing and grabbing and working with our data and providing better tools to our users. The struggle I had was that the Flask platform really was not, there was no documentation for how to build something to interact with that for authentication. And usually with OAuth these days, it seems like there are effective libraries for doing this. But that was something that I really struggled with and was, it was a serious challenge. I would say that the endpoint documentation on the Sky API end was good, although in the most recent update, it seems like it may have gone back a bit of a step, although I may be not looking at the most recent version of the documentation, so there may be more to come there. And I would say lastly, community was one thing that I struggled with as well. I think Blackbaud has done made some forays into this, but it would be really helpful to continue to grow and develop this. And I imagine this conference is one part of that venture. Is a member of a school and a developer, there is usually, if there is a developer at a school, there's one of us, and it is really helpful to have other people to talk through problems and challenges with. The one time that I did find myself reaching out to some of the message boards, I did find that I got a response, and that was helpful and wonderful. But that is one area that I think could use some really wonderful development. And as far as next steps for this project, I think there is one pretty obvious area for development here. The manual step that our sub-admin has for contacting substitutes is one that really could clearly be automated. But I think that, as I mentioned earlier, there are good reasons to avoid automating this process. because it allows for a little bit more hands-on customization of who is assigned to what responsibility. And I will just add as well that if I were to have a client that I was building for, in this case, it always was the sub-admin. I'm going to be honest, I was hesitant to automate them out of a job, which this feels like it has the potential to lean towards. Other next steps, certainly it would be good to refactor this website to take advantage of the new endpoints. One of the dilemmas that this website has had is because it captures a snapshot in time of the courses that a given teacher might be teaching. As those change, as rooms change, which happens frequently as we accommodate students who may have broken a leg and may not be able to get upstairs to their language class, it would be better to point directly to live data rather than the current version, which is just a snapshot in time. Lastly, it would be good to update this to, rather than using capturing as a string all of the sub-assignments for a given day, to capture the events individually so that those events could actually be parsed and assigned to different users, which is something that is new in our process this year, and I haven't had the time to update this. I hope that these next steps would be one that as we approach summer, I may have the time to do. Although I'll just share an old teacher quote that the most important things about being a teacher are June, July, and August. And I certainly plan on spending a little bit of time as we wrap up the end of the school year and approach the end of things, catching my breath from another historically disruptive year in the education space, but look forward to being able to knock out some good code as we head back towards August. That wraps up the presentation piece from me. I can see we've got a few chat questions coming in, and I would love to open it up to those and see if I can't answer a few questions. Let's see. I noticed a question early. Oh, great. I see one from Eric. The question is, when the Flask backend calls a Sky endpoint, it must provide an access token. Did each visitor to the site go through the OAuth flow to associate a new Sky API access token with their particular Flask session? Or did I create a single Blackbaud ID for the Flask application? It is the latter. I created a single Blackbaud ID for that Flask application. I can say these are all kind of GET calls. There is nothing that I've written in that does any data modification. But yes, it's a single Blackbaud ID. And I'm more than open to any other best practices around this yes, if there's a better Flask library that I could be using that might simplify the OAuth flow there. Hopefully that answers your question, Eric. I see a question from Kevin that asks if I could clarify which calendar library I'm using. I'm going to jump back to that slide on my deck. It's actually Full Calendar. Full Calendar is a free open source JavaScript library. Again, this is kind of the look and feel of it, which has a really fantastic standard web look and feel, but that is the stack that I'm using there. And I see another question from Eric that says, currently we're using RENext from Blackbaud. And let's see, it just dropped out. And you're not familiar with other offerings. Are you using a Blackbaud software as a service, SIS? If so, what's the name of the offering? I'm I'm going to be honest, Eric, I'm not sure I'm understanding that question. Can you break that down a little bit? We're using and interacting with the education management solution from Blackbaud. I don't know if that is helpful. And that is the data that we are interacting with. So, okay, I hope that is helpful. Happy to share code or share any other things that may be helpful. My contact information, again, is just pway@xrds.org. Thank you all for your time, and I hope this was helpful to some of you out there in cyberspace. And I believe before we get off, I believe Gabriela has a survey for folks. Gabriela, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yep. Thank you so much, Paul, for showing us all the amazing things that you do. So I'll go ahead now and launch the survey. So remember, guys, to please submit and answer the survey. Remember that if we give Paul enough votes, he will be able to win that golden ticket and go to share this amazing session at BBCon. So don't forget to do that. And thank you so much, Paul, for your time.
Great. Thank you.